Act 1. The Shadow. The mid-19th century. An age of steam, of empire, and of scientific arrogance. From Madrid to Moscow, the great cities of Europe were building cathedrals to medicine. But within these grand walls, a shadow was spreading. A terror so specific, so lethal, that it had its own name in every language. In London, they called it Childbed Fever. In Madrid, Fiebre puerperal. In Vienna, Childbed Fever. The statistics were not just numbers, they were a massacre. In the Westminster lying in hospital in London, epidemics swept through the wards like wildfire, killing 1 in every 3 women. In Würzburg, Germany, the death rate climbed to 26%. In the Hôtel Dieu in Paris, there were weeks where the mortality was absolute. 7 women would fall ill, and 7 would die. In Spain, the fear was so palpable that women in labor would reportedly cling to the doorframes of their homes, screaming, refusing to be taken to the hospitals of Madrid. They knew that to enter the hospital was often to leave in a coffin. But nowhere was the contrast more terrifying than in the center of the civilized world, Vienna. Here, in the massive general hospital, the Black Death of the childbed had created 2 distinct worlds. There were 2 clinics. The second clinic, run by midwives, lost perhaps 4% of their patients. But the first clinic, the prestigious ward run by the finest doctors and medical students, was a slaughterhouse. 10%, 20%, in some dark months, nearly 30% of all mothers died. The sound of the priest's bell, ringing for the dying, never stopped. It terrified the living. Women would fall to their knees, begging the admissions doctors, please, not the first clinic. Anything but the first clinic. Act 2. The Pivot. Into this nightmare stepped Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian outsider. He was 28 years old, sensitive, and dangerously obsessive. He could not accept the standard explanations that the deaths were caused by bad air, or cosmic influences, or even the shame of being examined by men. He became a detective. He dismantled the problem piece by piece. Was it the overcrowding? No, the midwife's clinic was more crowded. Was it the diet? No, the food was identical. Was it the priest's bell scaring them to death? He even silenced the bell, but the women kept dying. The answer lay in the morning routine. The first clinic was a teaching ward. Every morning, the doctors and students began the day in the morgue. They performed autopsies on the women who had died the day before. They dissected the tragedy to understand it. Then, tragedy struck close to home. In 1847, Semmelweis' friend, Professor Kolleczka, died after being accidentally pricked by a student's scalpel during an autopsy. Semmelweis read the autopsy report of his friend. The pathology, the inflammation, the sepsis, was identical to the mother's. And the truth hit him like a physical blow. The doctors were the carriers. There were no germs in science yet. Semmelweis called them cadaverous particles. Invisible death stuck to the hands of the very men sworn to heal. They walked from the dead directly to the living. Act 3. The Struggle. The solution was offensive to the nose and the ego. Semmelweis ordered every student to wash their hands in a solution of chlorinated lime, a harsh bleaching agent, until the smell of the corpse was gone. The results were instant. In April 1847, mortality was 18.3%. Handwashing began in May. By June, 2.2%. By July, 1.2%. In 1848, there were months where 0 women died. He had saved them. He had conquered the plague of Europe. But facts, alas, are no match for pride. The medical establishment did not see a savior, they saw an accuser. To admit Semmelweis was right was to admit that they, the gentlemen of science, were the killers. As the American obstetrician Charles Meigs famously sneered, doctors are gentlemen, and a gentleman's hands are clean. The politics of 1848 turned against him. As revolutions swept Europe, Semmelweis, a Hungarian in Vienna, became a pariah. His contract was not renewed. He was fired. He left Vienna without even saying goodbye to his friends. Act 4. The Human Moment. Back in Budapest, he saved lives in silence. At the St. Rochus Hospital, he reduced mortality to under 1%. But the rejection from Europe ate away at his mind. He watched from afar as thousands of women continued to die in London, Paris, and Berlin, deaths he knew how to prevent. He began to write open letters to the heads of European medicine. I declare before God and the world that you are a murderer, and the history of puerperal fever will not do you an injustice when it records you as the medical Nero. It ended in betrayal. In 1865, his colleagues, perhaps fearing for his sanity, or perhaps just tired of his accusations, lured him to an asylum in Vienna under false pretenses. When he tried to leave, he was beaten by the guards. And here lies the final, crushing irony. During the struggle, Semmelweis suffered a wound on his right hand. Gangrene set in. 2 weeks later, Ignaz Semmelweis died of sepsis, the very same blood poisoning he had spent his life fighting. He died a victim of the very darkness he had tried to light. Act 5. The Legacy. Today, in every hospital from Madrid to Melbourne, the ritual begins at the sink. 20 years after Semmelweis died, Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister proved the germ theory. They provided the why to Semmelweis' how. But the lesson of Ignaz Semmelweis is not just about hygiene. It is about humility. Psychologists now call it the Semmelweis Reflex, the knee-jerk human tendency to reject new evidence because it contradicts our established norms. Because it hurts our ego. We all have a little bit of that 19th century doctor inside of us. When the truth is uncomfortable, when the facts say we might be wrong, do we listen? Or do we wash our hands of it? Somewhere in your family tree, a great-grandmother, a great-aunt, there is likely a woman who survived childbirth because a Hungarian fool refused to stay silent. We owe him more than just clean hands. We owe him an open mind. Thank you for walking through history with us today. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you see the Semmelweis reflex playing out in our world right now? Is there a modern truth we are too proud to accept? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. History is, after all, a conversation. If you value these stories of resilience and truth, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. It helps us keep the lantern lit. Until next time.